Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Julie K here with a process tutorial on how I make my Shabby Chic altered composition notebooks. This is the completed altered composition notebook that I will be creating in this video today. I will be creating in a Shabby Chic style, which means layers of paper, lace, trims, beads, and of course shabby colors like pastel pink, blue, and white. This process tutorial is just a guideline when it comes to decorating your very own notebook. I would like to encourage you to use the supplies that you have on hand and feel free to decorate in your own style by adding different elements or taking away the ones that you don't like. If you would like to create this or a similar altered composition notebook, please continue to watch the rest of this video for the process tutorial. The following is a supply list to make a similar notebook. Many of these items are optional or can be interchanged with other supplies that you might have on hand. To start this project, you will need a composition notebook, white gesso, and a paintbrush. I recommend using a notebook with a chipboard or paper cover versus the plastic notebooks available on the market today. The chipboard covers will take the gesso better, along with having more options for adhesives with this type of cover. The first step will be to cover the edges and spine of the notebook with 2 to 3 layers of the gesso. This is optional, but in sticking with my Shabby Chic style, I do not want my black spine and edges to show on the finished book. If you do not own gesso, white acrylic paint will also work for this process. Before I start applying the gesso, I add a piece of wax paper to protect the inner lined pages. Again, add 2 to 3 layers of gesso on the spine and edges of the front and back covers. Make sure that you let the gesso dry in between each application. After the layers of gesso have dried, you can begin to add scrapbooking paper to the notebook. I will be using the French Flea Market paper by Julie Nutting. Cut 2 pieces of pink paper that are roughly 6 7/8 by 9 3/4 for the outside covers. Cut 2 pieces of coordinating paper for the inside covers. The measurements are 7 3/8 by 9 3/4 inches. Please note that these are slightly larger than the outside measurements, as I am choosing to let part of the spine show on the outside covers. Next, I round 2 of the paper edges to match the composition notebook. I am using the 1/2 inch setting on my We Are Memory Keepers corner punch. The next step is to ink the edges using a foam blending tool and brown ink. If you do not own this tool, a makeup sponge works well. Also note that if you do not like the look of brown ink, you could use a matching pink or blue color or skip this step altogether. I like the look of distress edges, so I'm going to use my favorite distress tool from Close to My Heart, but you can also use a similar one by Tim Holtz that works just as well. You can also use the edge of your scissors to achieve the same look as the distress tool. Distress all the edges on both the front and back covers. I often go back and distress a second time to all the edges to add a few extra small tears. I add extra ink to the edges. After prepping the base layers, we can begin to attach them to the notebook. When you attach the paper, you want to make sure that you use a strong double-sided tape or glue. When you apply tape, you want to make sure that all of the outside edges have tape along with reinforcements in the middle. We are going to be putting on a lot of layers of paper and embellishments, so you want to make sure that everything holds. It is better to have a little too much tape than not enough. When attaching my paper, I like to start with taking the backing off of one strip just in case I need to readjust the paper. Once I'm happy with the alignment, I take the backing off of the rest of the tape and attach the paper. Next, I flip the notebook over and do the exact same steps on the back side. After adding the base layers to the outside covers, the next step is to attach paper to both of the inside covers by following the same steps as before. After the base layers are completed, we can start decorating the cover. I begin the layering process by cutting another sheet of the French flea market paper to 6 by 9 inches. I prep this layer by using the corner rounder, ink, blending, and distress tools. Attach layer to the notebook. Cut a layer of coordinating paper that roughly measures 2.5 by 8.25 inches. Cut one more layer in coordinating paper that roughly measures 4.5 by 7 inches. Next, ink and distress both layers. I also use my corner punch for 2 corners on the blue layer. Double check alignment and then attach both layers to the notebook. Take a wood frame and paint using acrylic paint. I am using a pastel pink color, but another option would be white or a pastel blue. I'm going to lighten and shabby up my frame by using Picket Fence Distress Stain by Tim Holtz. If you do not own this stain, white acrylic paint will also work. I lightly apply the stain and use my finger to blend it in. I set the frame aside to dry and then add the distress stain to some of the layers on the notebook. Next, I take the cut apart sheet from the Julie Nutting French Flea Market collection. I cut out several of the cutouts to use as layering pieces. In the final project, I end up using the bingo card, the sentiment, "Today will be a most amazing day," the bird cages, and also the one with the Eiffel Tower. I do play around with several of the pieces and decide to use the bingo card behind the frame. I also cut out the sentiment, "Today will be a most amazing day," using a Spellbinder's oval cutting die. I again lay everything out and attach the bingo cutout to the notebook. I glue the oval sentiment to the frame with tacky glue. You want to add enough glue so that the paper adheres to the frame, but not so much glue that it will warp and wrinkle your paper. I lay out and attach a piece of lace trim. My plan is to wrap it around the spine. I like to use wet glue like Eileen's Fabric Fusion or tacky glue to attach laces and trims. There's also a glue on the market called Fabri-Tac that works well for gluing laces and trims. Since I'm going to wrap the lace trim, I'm going to just glue the half piece that is on the front. The goal is to try and put small amounts of glue on the solid parts of the lace without adding so much that you have a lot of seepage on the other side. Carefully lift lace and attach to the notebook. Make sure you clean up any excess glue on your workspace before moving the notebook. Add a little more glue if you need to any stubborn areas. Next, I add a floral trim over the lace I just glued down. I use tacky glue this time, but use whatever wet glue you like to use best. Next, I'm going to attach this beautiful heart lace trim to three sides of the notebook. I again use tacky glue. I apply glue to the top 3/8 inch. I add the same trim to the top of the notebook. Again, using tacky glue, I apply the last piece of this lace to the long side of the notebook. I add a piece of wax paper under the cover for protection, and in hindsight, I probably should have done this earlier before I applied the lace. I am going to use my hot glue gun to glue on a string of pink bead trim. I add a second string of bead trim to the inside edge of the floral trim, again using my hot glue gun. I love the look of teardrop bead trim. My plan is to attach it on three sides of the notebook using a hot glue gun. I add another layer of pink bead trim to the inside edges of the teardrop bead trim. I do this to all three sides. I decide to attach a string of flat back pearl trim to the side of the spine using hot glue. Next, I'm going to add flat back pearls to the inside of the floral trim for added detail. Next, I'm going to add this gorgeous pink trim. I again use tacky glue to attach this trim. I'm going to attach flat back pearls in between the pink flowers. The next step is to decorate the frame. I begin this process by adding blue bead trim with a hot glue gun. After attaching the bead trim, I will use hot glue to adhere a heart-shaped cabochon and flat back pearls. I set the frame aside and decide to decorate the back of the notebook while I ponder how I want to finish the front. I again use my fabric fusion glue since that is what I used on the other half of the lace. I again add glue to all the solid parts of the lace. I add another layer of lace trim to be consistent with the front cover. To finish the look, I add a string of flat back pearls, again using my hot glue gun. While I'm waiting for the lace to dry, I add my signature stamp to the back side. I decide that the back cover isn't quite finished yet, so I add a string of pink pearls. I flip the notebook over and begin to add the final touches to the cover by attaching the decorated wood frame, a wood veneer sentiment that says love, and flat back pearl trim. To attach the frame, I use foam tape for dimension along with hot glue. I add 2 small strands of flat back pearls. I add 4 flat back pearl embellishments to the corners for a more detailed look. Finally, I add a wood veneer sentiment that I painted with pink acrylic paint, whitewashed with picket fence distress stain, and inked the edges with brown ink, very similar to the same technique that I used on the larger pink frame. Since this is smaller and more detailed, I opt to use glossy accents instead of hot glue. I let it dry and then begin to decorate the inside cover by adding a decorated glassine bag. I use leftover Julie nutting paper, laces, and beads to decorate the bag. The final step is to attach the decorated bag to the inside cover. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe for future project shares, tutorials, craft hauls, and design team projects. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you back soon.